Hello, and thank you for joining Diversified Administration's 2017 ACA Spreadsheet webinar. During this webinar, we're going to show you how to complete some of the spreadsheets that we have for this year. Now, we are proud to announce that we've invested heavily in some technology that's going to make this much easier for you to complete, as well as easier for us to review. The first thing I want to do is cover a few of the things that are going to make it much easier for you to complete this information. Now, we have both an employer and an employee spreadsheet, and regardless of what you do, the first thing that you're going to need to do is when you'll see this security warning that says macros have been disabled. Now, you can think of macros as synonymous with magic, because once you enable that, that's what enables these spreadsheets to do the magic that we invested in. So you'll click Options and then enable this content. Now, once you do that, you'll see here that we've opened the employee spreadsheet, and you actually have a big error here. It says the most current employer spreadsheet must be open before proceeding. Click OK when ready. So if you ever see that error, the first thing that you need to do is go ahead and open up the employer spreadsheet. Now, just as you did with the employee spreadsheet, when you open it, you will want to make sure to click Options and then enable this content. And then as a reminder, we do have this little black box here that says macros must be enabled prior to filling out this form, as well as our phone number there. What you'll want to enter here is the company name as it is on the IRS EIN verification. If you don't yet have your IRS EIN verification, you will want to get that from them. You can reach out to us to get that information, and it will also be included in the blast of this email. So we're going to go ahead and use Diversified Administration here. And we're also going to go ahead and use the EIN here. Now, once you enter this, you'll notice these next group of cells clear up and allow you to enter the information there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, for the states, it is a drop-down list. If you do try and type in there and then go outside of that, you're going to get an error. So we recommend if that happens, click Cancel. That will remove the values from there, and you can go ahead and select your state accordingly. So we'll go ahead and select Florida here. Now, these fields do have validation, so it knows that the zip is either going to be a 5-digit number, or if you have the additional 4, it knows it will be a 9-digit number, whereas if you just try and enter something incorrect, it's actually going to highlight that cell in red. And you'll see up here, we actually communicate to you saying, hey, there's an invalid zip, and it actually tells you the exact cell that you want to go to. So now we can now go here, and we'll go ahead and correct that. Same thing for the phone number. If it gets anything that it's not expecting, it's going to highlight that cell in red, and it will again tell you, hey, this is what the issue is. There's an invalid phone number, and it will tell you where it is. We'll go ahead and correct that. And go ahead and put the signer's name, title. Same thing for the email. There's also a validation. If it's not a valid email format, you will get that error there. Now, are you part of a controlled group or aggregate large employer? That's a question that if you don't know the answer, you'd actually need to consult either the group's controller or ERISA attorney. But if you do know whether or not you're part of a controlled group, you'll want to answer that. If there's only one EIN in that company or aggregate large employer, you're going to go ahead and put no. When you do, you're saying, hey, there's no other companies part of this filing. So this area here will black out, so you can't put their information in. If there is other companies part of this controlled group, they will go ahead and open up these first 2 fields here, and just like column B, as you enter the information in, the next group of cells will free up. Let's say you're a very large employer and you have more than 7 EINs in your group. Once you fill that out, or even before, you can go ahead and click the Add column, and this will go indefinitely. So regardless of the size of your company, you can continue to add companies, and then we'll be able to process them there. Now, the name of the initial lowest cost plan, this is just a unique identifier. It almost doesn't matter what you call it. It's just something to differentiate it from the other plans. So you can do something as simple as calling this Plan 1. Maybe it's a Aetna HMO. Whatever you want to call it, that way it's whatever it happens to be. Now, this filing is for the 2017 plan year. So you could have a plan that started as early as February 1st, 2016, because that plan is still going to be in effect for January of 2017. Now, if that was the case, you'd enter all of the information for that plan here, but the spreadsheet is smart enough to know that if you had a plan ending January 31st, 2017, you're going to have a new plan that started the very next day, February 1st, 2017. Now, if you tried to say, oh, this plan actually started January 1st, 2016, you're actually going to have that highlighted in red. So that's an invalid start date because that plan would end before the 2017 plan year. So it will accept dates anywhere from that February 1st, 2016 to December 1st, 2017. Let's say you're a new company and only in December were you offering benefits for this year. Well, that's fine. It will allow that, but it also won't allow for anything next year, something that starts 2018, because again, that's not going to be part of the 2017 plan year. So we're just going to go ahead and, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to have a calendar year 2017 plan for this example. Now, for your waiting period, you have a few options here. Maybe benefits become available date of hire, after 1 month, after 2 months, 30, 60, or even 90 days. And then once you have the waiting period, when does coverage become effective? You can enter code 1 if coverage begins immediately following the waiting period, or you'd enter code 2 if it's first of the month following that. So let's say that this particular company said we're going to offer benefits first of the month following 90 days. When you do that, you'll notice they highlight in yellow. If there's something in yellow, it means it's possible that yes, your plan could do that, but it also means that it's not ObamaCare compliant, or it might need your attention for some way. So first of the month following 90 days of employment is not ObamaCare compliant, but let's say it was immediately following 90 days. As soon as you do that, the yellow disappears because it says, hey, that's a valid plan setup. I'm going to go ahead and change this to first of the month following 60 days because that's one of the most common ways that plans are set up. Now say you have a covered employee and he terminates, he loses his job. When do the benefits end? Do they end that day or do they go till the end of the month? In this example, I'll select end of the month because that's more common, but if you do terminate benefits on day of termination, that's where you would select that. Now, one thing that this ACA is concerned with is that your plans meet minimum value. So we do have to ask. We have not really had many plans that don't meet minimum value, so you're probably going to be put yes here. But if for whatever reason your plan doesn't meet the minimum value, you would put no. Now, obviously, you'll see the highlight there because if it's no, that means that's not ObamaCare compliant. So probably you'll be putting yes there. Now, here, this is what you're going to put how much the employees had to contribute each month for the employee-only portion of the cheapest plan. So if somebody got the gold plan for the entire family, you're not actually going to put the contribution for that. You're going to put what their contribution would be if they got the lowest, the least expensive plan available and the employee-only tier. Now, let's say this is a very generous plan. The plan pays 90% and the employees only have to pay 10%. And let's say it's $25. That's the employee's monthly contribution. Our system knows that at that dollar amount, you're most likely going to be wanting to use the federal poverty level safe harbor. Now, you can change that if for whatever reason you wanted to say, no, we don't want to use that. We want to use a different safe harbor. You are able to select those. Now, let's say that was the plan is not quite as generous and the employee's monthly contribution is $125. Well, when we enter that, you'll see the affordability safe harbor changes to rate of pay. Again, if you wanted to override that, you could, but in our experience, depending on the employee's monthly contribution, we do pick the best available safe harbor for you. Now, here's where you're going to put the funding arrangement of your plan. If you're fully insured, you're going to go ahead and select fully insured here. If you're self-funded or combination, you're going to put that as well. Now, I'm going to select self-funded here, as that's going to give me a few other options that I can show you when I'm filling out the employee spreadsheet. Now, these last two questions are generally yes. It's just saying, does the spouse and dependent, are they able to elect coverage through the company? So if the employee wanted coverage, are they allowed to add their spouse and dependent to it, which is almost always the case. So now we've got this. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now we're going to go back to that other spreadsheet here, to the employee spreadsheet, now that this is all filled out. Now it's still saying, hey, the most current employer spreadsheet must be opened. Click OK when ready. Well, now we have that employer spreadsheet open, so we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now it says, oh, the employer name is missing at C6. So go column C6. We'll go ahead and enter this information. Now it's saying, hey, contact is missing at C7. So I'll go ahead, we'll put the contact. Now this is going to be the main person who we're going to be working with. If they have questions, this is going to be our first point of contact here. We do require a main point of contact before you can fill anything out, which is why all of this is locked. This is something that actually helps us. Sometimes last year we would get a spreadsheet where somebody spent hours filling it out, but they didn't put any of the information up here. So we had no idea what company it was for, no way to get a hold of them. So in order to avoid that, we actually now prompt you to fill this out before you can enter any of the other information. Now, once all that's been entered, you can see, hey, this really intimidating error message is gone. And now we actually have all of this information here where we're able to enter, where before it was blocked off. Now, just like above, or on the previous sheet, some of these fields that have specific information are validated. So if you try and put something that's not a social security number in the social security number field, it's going to know. If you don't put the dashes, that's okay. It will know that they go there. So there are going to be a number of things like that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually, when you enter a social security number, it knows that, hey, there's going to be a valid person here. So then it's actually going to allow you to enter your hire date and your employment status. And then as you enter some more of this information, so we'll say, just for simplicity's sake, we'll show that someone was hired January 1st, 2000. Actually, let's say they were hired January 2nd, 2017. Well, their employment status on 1/1/17, they were not employed, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to put full-time here because that's what they are hired as. So even though this says 1/1/17, if they were hired prior to January 1st, 2017, you'll put their employment status on January 1st, 2017, whatever it happened to be. For anyone hired after January 1st, 2017, this will be their initial employment status. So if you're hiring them as a full-time employee, you'll put full-time. If you're hiring them as a part-time employee, you'd be putting part-time. Once there is a hire date and an employment status, you'll actually be able to enter some of the basic insurance information. Now, was the coverage affordable? So for this individual, we'll say yes, the coverage was affordable, and we'll say they became insured. Well, it's going to say what date. Now, let's say I say January 1st, 2017. No, it's going to turn red. There's going to be an error, and this actually tells me, hey, this date actually has to be after the date of hire. You can't offer someone coverage until they've at least worked for you. So, okay, so let's say I go ahead, I do that. I say, okay, we offer coverage that day. You'll actually notice there's still a highlight in here. Now, there's no warning message, but it's highlighted. So that just means it doesn't match what's in the employer sheet. So if we go back to the employer sheet here, it says, oh, it's expecting the benefit to be offered first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment. So it's most likely that this is going to have to be either 3-1 or 4-1, depending on how many days are in the month, but we'll know by how the color it turns. So yeah, 3-1 says no, they'd still be in their waiting period. 4-1 is when it would expect the benefits to be offered. So that's really when it was. Perfect. If it was offered in 3-1, it's going to allow you to enter that. If you see something in yellow, it means it is possible that's correct. You'll just want to double check. So after we double checked, we determined no, this was open on 4-1 is when that benefit was first offered. So now what I'm going to do, now that I've showed you a lot of the underlying technology for the spreadsheets, I'm going to go ahead and close this one here, which is essentially the blank employee data spreadsheet. And I'm going to open up one where I've completed it, and it has most of the most common situations that you're going to encounter when filling this out. Now, just as when I opened the prior spreadsheet, you're going to see here, security warning, macros have been disabled. So we're going to go ahead, select options, enable this content. Okay, and now we're able to edit the spreadsheet. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to show you, again, the most common situations you're likely to face when entering in this information. So here we've got Bruce Wayne, and we can see here he was hired years ago on January 1st, 2017. He was a full-time employee. The coverage offered was affordable. He was insured, and he's been insured since the beginning of the year. Now, in the example I used, this plan is a calendar year plan, so the benefits start January 1st, 2017. But let's say this plan started June of 2016, and it's only going to go through May 30th of 2017. You're still going to put January 1st, 2017 here, and not June 1st, 2016. The reason is this is a 2017 filing, and the IRS just doesn't care what happened before this date. So regardless of whether or not they were covered before that date, they're only concerned with what happened in 2017. So for all of these examples, we're only going to have 2017 there. Now, for an individual who was insured all year and had no other changes, this is going to be all that's going to be entered for them. We've got their hire date, showing they're a full-time employee. Affordable coverage was offered, which they took, and they took it since the beginning of the year. And that's it. That gives us all the information we need to prepare their filing. Now, another situation that's going to be incredibly common is what we have for Don Draper here. Again, he's worked for us for any number of years as a full-time employee. The coverage we offered was affordable, but he waived that coverage. He's waived coverage since the beginning of the year, and there were no changes. So for any employees who have been working for you and they've had no changes and waived coverage, it's going to be entered just like this on line 2. Now, we can see here the notes column, you don't have to put anything there, just like I did in 11 and 12. This is optional, but that helps communicate to us some things that you may want to let us know. So this is just saying that Archie Andrews was a new hire. And we can see here, and it's relatively new, so it's a few months ago, but he was hired on November 16th of 2016. On January 1st, 2017, he was a full-time employee. We did offer affordable coverage, which he took. The difference here is you'll see that his coverage began February 1st, 2017. That's because of that waiting period, the first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment. So because he was hired in November, and that gives us all of December and all of January as his 60 days, and then first of the month following. So February 1st is when his benefits begin. Now, you're also likely, depending on the size of the company, to have a number of terminations throughout the year. So we have Wade Wilson here, and again, in the previous examples, he's worked for us for any number of years as a full-time employee on January 1st, 2017. We offered affordable coverage, which he took, and he was covered since the beginning of the year. Now we can see here, we termed him January 17th, 2017, and date coverage offer ended January 30th, 2017, because benefits end the final day of the month. Now you'll notice that this cell is highlighted yellow. Well, why is that highlighted yellow? It's because benefits end the final day of the month, but January 30th isn't the final day of the month. There's actually 31 days. So if we go ahead and change that to January 31st, 2017, you'll see the yellow is removed. So again, if you see something yellow, it may be correct. It may be possible that that's when his benefits ended, but it needs attention. So if you see something yellow, just look at it. It may need to be corrected. If it does, the yellow will go away. The next example here, we have Logan Howlett, and we can see again there's some kind of termination. So, as in the previous examples, he's worked for us for quite some time. On January 1st, 2017, he's a full-time employee. We offered affordable coverage, which he waived. So that coverage was waived, and he waived since the beginning of the year. Just as with the insured benefits, the coverage offer is going to end that final day of the month. So because he was terminated February 19th, even though he waived coverage, the offer still extends till the final day of the month. So that date the coverage offer ended is going to be the final day of that month. So just think of it regardless of whether they're insured or waived. When they terminate, the offer terminates at the end of that month, depending on whether you have end of the month here or whether you have date of termination. So continuing on now, we're going to look at Clark Kent, and we can see here he's a new hire. So we actually just hired him less than a month ago, so he's just been hired. Now, he wasn't actually with us on January 1st, 2017, but as I mentioned, if they weren't employed on this date, it's what's their initial hire status. So he was hired as a full-time employee, so we're just going to have his date of hire, full-time employee. Now, we actually haven't offered him coverage yet, so we can't say whether it's affordable, and we can't say whether he took the coverage or whether he waived, and we certainly don't have an offer date. Now, why are these blank? Shouldn't I put no, we didn't offer coverage? Well, no, that's not correct either. It's because you may offer coverage. He may still be employed after the waiting period, in which case at that time you'd say, once the offer was made, yes, the coverage was or wasn't affordable. Yes, he was insured or he waived, and you'd put the effective date. Now for here, he would be all of June, all of July. So his effective date, his initial coverage offer date would be August 1st. So until August 1st, this is going to be blank. These cells here are going to be blank. But on or after August 1st, we'll know, hey, yes, we did offer coverage. Yes or no, it wasn't affordable. We'll be able to say whether he took it or not. But until that time, while someone's still in the waiting period, columns N, O, and P will be blank. Now, we see here, it looks like Peter Parker became covered at open enrollment. So let's take a look at this, because this is going to be one of the first more complex situations, but again, you're still likely to have a few of those. So he's worked for us for a little while. He's been a full-time employee on January 1st, 2017. The coverage that we offered was affordable, but he waived, and he had waived coverage since the beginning of the year. Now, let's say he had some kind of qualifying event. Maybe he got a divorce. Previously, he was on his wife's insurance. Now that they're divorced, he has not able to be on their coverage. That's a qualifying event. So the first of the month following, or the effective date, we're saying 2/1, he became insured. Now, one of the things that we did with this is this software knows that if someone had waived, and then you go ahead and you actually put a status change date in there, it's going to auto-populate with insured, because if someone waived and then has a status change, it knows they're going to become insured. So it takes care of that for you. Now, here we're going to show that coverage can also be dropped due to a qualifying event. So here we have Jughead Jones. He has worked for the company for any number of years. On January 1st, 2017, he was a full-time employee. We offered affordable coverage, which he took, and he was covered since the beginning of the year. Now, let's say Jughead had a much more happy qualifying event. He got married and decided to go on his wife's insurance, and right here on 3/1, we'll see he had the status change date, and it knew since he was insured previously, since he now has a status change, it knows that as of 3/1, he's going to be waiving coverage. One more example here, Charles Xavier. We'll see he's worked for the company any number of years. January 1st, 2017, he was a full-time employee who was offered affordable coverage, which he waived. Now, he waived that since the beginning of the year, but on 2/1/17, he had some kind of status change that allowed him to become insured as of February 1st. Now, this one's actually combining a few of the other ones because so he had the status change, but he also had a termination. So March 16th, he terminated, and then that offer of coverage, his benefits ended on March 31st, 2017. Now, this is going to be a very rare situation. You probably won't have this, but we did want to include it because it is still happens from time to time. Let's say there is an employee like Geraldine Grundy, just had, good worker, but maybe like a bad attitude or whatever reason you decide, she is eligible for coverage, but we're just not going to offer it to her. So, she worked for the company for a little while, or, has worked for the company for a little while. She's a full-time employee, but it's not offered for the coverage is affordable, and it's not offered for the status. So that basically means we didn't offer it to her, and then here we're just going to use the date of hire. So basically, since she was hired, we're just not going to offer her coverage. Now, the one difference that I want to show you between not offered and not eligible. So we've got Stephen Rogers here. Now he's worked for the company for any number of years, but he's been a part-time employee. Now here you'll notice it's a little different than the line above. You'll see as far as the affordability question, the affordability is still not offered, but on the offer status, it actually says not eligible. So I wanted to take just a moment to explain the difference between not offered and not eligible. Part-time employees generally aren't going to be benefit eligible, as well as employees who are in their waiting period. Those are the only main categories of employees who are not eligible. Now, if you have a full-time employee who is eligible, but you decided for whatever reason that you're not going to offer them, even though they are eligible for benefits, that's where you'll put the not offered, not offered. But where if it's someone who they're just not eligible for benefits, again, because maybe they're part-time, maybe they're in their waiting period, you're going to put not offered, not eligible. And again, even though he's been not eligible for quite some time, the IRS doesn't care what happened before January 1st, 2017 for this filing, so we're just going to say since the beginning of the year he was not eligible. Now you'll also see here that we've got information in a new column for the first time here. We're saying, hey, they have a new employment status. So we're saying now they are a full-time employee, and we're saying, well, what's the date of this new status? And we're saying February 6th. February 6, 2017, they became a full-time employee. Now, because he's a full-time employee, he's eligible for benefits again. So we're saying, yes, we did offer affordable coverage. They took it, they're insured, and they're insured as of 5/1/17, which is that first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment. Now, here for the next group, it's going to get more and more complex. So the above group were some of the more simple things, the more common ones. This group is going to be less and less common, but they are still going to happen, especially in some of the larger companies. So I wanted to show you how they're going to be entered. Now, when you have a full-time employee who gets transferred to part-time, if they were insured, that reduction of hours is a COBRA qualifying event, which means that when you do have an insured employee who goes from full-time to part-time, they have to be offered COBRA, and then of course they can either accept or waive that offer. So here we're going to show a full-time to part-time transition where COBRA is waived, and then the following will show the same thing, but where COBRA is elected. So here we have Tony Stark. And we can see he's worked for the company for any number of years. He began the year as a full-time employee who was offered affordable coverage, which he took since the beginning of the year. Now, we're going to say that offer ended January 31st, 2017. Well, why is that? And the reason is because here we see he became a part-time employee on January 18th, 2017. Now, that means that as of February 1st, he became, as of January 19th, he became a part-time employee. Now, benefits go till the end of the month, so regardless of the fact that he became a part-time employee mid-month, his benefits go till the end of the month. Now, there's a new status, which is not offered as of February 1st, because he's now a part-time employee. He's not eligible for benefits. And I actually just realized, as a part-time employee, he's not eligible for benefits. So it would be not offered, not eligible is how that would actually be entered. So not offered. Why? Because he's not eligible because of part-time. When did that start? That started February 1st. So again, now we're going to look at a full-time to part-time transition where they do elect COBRA. So we've got Robert Banner here, worked for the company for any number of years, started the year as a full-time employee who was offered affordable coverage, which he took since the beginning of the year. Now you'll notice here that there is no coverage offer end date. And the reason is you will want a coverage offer end date there. So we're going to put 1/31/17. Excuse me, that ends at the end of February. So it would be 2/28/17, and I'll show you why. Is because on February 25th, he became a part-time employee. So his benefit as a full-time employee ends at the end of the month. Now we see here, because of that reduction of hours, he was eligible for COBRA. Now with COBRA, affordability is not really a question. The affordability is only concerned with the employees. So in order to make that clear, for the affordability, we're actually going to say COBRA. So this individual, that lets us know they're on COBRA. Now they did take it, they took it, so they're insured. And there is no waiting period for COBRA. So his insurance with as an active employee ended February 28th, and then the very next day, the COBRA insurance began. So there's no lapse in coverage or there's no waiting periods in those instances. Now, when someone goes from full-time to part-time, they're only eligible for COBRA if they were insured at the time that reduction in hours happened. So you'll notice in both of these two prior examples, the individual was insured at the time that they had that full-time to part-time reduction. In this instance, we're going to see they waived since the beginning of the year. On February 25th, they became a part-time employee. They're not eligible for COBRA. So that's going to be 2/28, and that's when their benefit ended. Now for this instance, we actually will again be putting that they are not offered and not eligible starting 3/1/17 because they were a part-time employee, and again, not eligible for COBRA. So that's how that would be entered. Now, some companies rehire. Now, with the rehire, it's important to know that this only refers to an employee who was employed during this 2017 plan year, who was then terminated, and subsequently rehired still inside the 2017 plan year. So if there was an employee who worked for you years ago and he's terminated and you just rehire him in 2017, that actually isn't going to be entered as a rehire. That's just going to be entered as a new hire. Rehires are only for people who were currently employed in 2017, were terminated, and then rehired in 2017. So let's take a look at Charlie Brown here and see how this happened. We see he's worked for us for quite some time as a full-time employee who was insured since the beginning of the year. And so Charlie Brown was terminated January 5th, and his coverage went until the end of the month. Now, let's say that he was rehired as a full-time employee. We're actually going to indicate that here. And rehired as a full-time employee, and we're actually going to say he was rehired March 5th, 2017. Now, when we put that, that actually is going to free up this extra information here that will let us show whether or not he was offered coverage. And we would say, yes, he was offered affordable coverage. If he took it, we'd go ahead and put insured. If he didn't, we would put waived. And then we'd put the date that that happened. Now, again, benefits are offered first of the month following 60 days. So if my math is correct, I believe that would be 6/1/17, and it is. If we put a date other than that, let's say 5/1/17, it's going to turn yellow saying, hey, that doesn't match the waiting period we were expecting. Now, let's say subsequently that this individual had a status change. So let's say he for some reason on 8/15, or the status changes are always generally going to be first of the month, so to say 8/1/17, and it knows that, hey, he was previously waived, so since there's now a status change, it's going to be the opposite of that. It's going to be insured. So yeah, the spreadsheet adapts depending on what you put in. It knows how to process that information. Now here we have Diana Prince, worked for the company for quite some time as a full-time employee who was offered affordable coverage, which they took since the beginning of the year. They also termed that same January 5th. Benefits ended on March 31st. Let's say this individual was rehired as a part-time employee. Rehired part-time. Then we'll put the date they were rehired, 4/1/17, and because they are part-time, they're going to not be offered coverage. They're going to not be eligible because they're part-time, and it'll be their date of rehire, that 4/1/17. So that's how you enter rehires, whether they're full or part-time. Now, for an individual who moves to another ALE member, these two next examples are only going to be for if you're part of a controlled group. If you only have one EIN in your company, you're actually not going to have these situations. But let's say you're a company with multiple EINs, and you have an employee who transfers from one company to another. And let's also say in those instances, there is no waiting period. They don't lose coverage. So if they were insured under one of the companies and they then go to the new company, they don't lose coverage. There's no gap in coverage. So we'll show how that would be entered. So in here, we have Veronica Lodge moved from this company to another ALE member. So she's worked here for any number of years as a full-time employee who was insured since the beginning of the year. Now, it's going to be entered really identical to a termination. When someone transfers to another company, it's no different from a termination. So her transfer was on February 4th, and her insurance goes till the final day of the month, until February 28th. Now, this next line here is actually going to be the opposite of that. That's what it's going to look like when someone moves to this company. They move to it from another. So they were previously employed at another EIN in this control group, and now they're moving to this company. So we'll basically say, hey, on February 5th of 2017, they became a full-time employee who was insured. Now, the one difference between entering someone just as a regular new hire, such as we did with Archie Andrews, and then how to enter them when they move from another company, the only difference is when they move from the other company, if there's not any break of insurance, we'll see that even though they moved to this company on February 5th, their insurance started the very first of the next month. So this individual, Betty Cooper, on the other spreadsheet for the prior company that she worked for, she'd have an entry very similar to Veronica Lodge, saying she's worked here for some time. She transferred on February 4th. Benefits went until the end of the month. Now here, February 5th, she's now at this company, and benefits start the very next day after they ended at the other company. So when someone transfers from another company, to another company from this EIN, it looks just like a termination. When they transfer to this company from another EIN, it looks just like a new hire, but the waiting period. And you'll see here the waiting period is in yellow, because generally it's going to expect benefits to be offered first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment. Now, we know in this particular instance, because it's a transfer from another company, her benefits do start 3/1. So yes, it will remain yellow, but we know we've looked at it, that's fine. So when something's yellow, sometimes it means it may need attention, like when you put 30th, so hey, that's actually incorrect. We're going to go ahead correct that. So sometimes you'll want to remove the yellows, and sometimes it really may be what it is. So just when they're yellow, you'll want to kind of look at that. Now, getting down to the final group of examples here. Now, this is for self-funded groups and combination-funded groups only. If you have fully insured, you won't have any COBRA or retiree, so only for self-funded and combination-funded plans. So we have Bruce Willis. He's worked for the company for a while as a full-time employee. He was offered affordable coverage, which he took since the beginning of the year. Now, he terminated on April 22nd, and his benefits went till the end of the month. Now, here he actually has a new employment status of NA, which means he's not employed anymore. And then he's not employed as of the next day. He terminated 4/23, terminated 4/22, and then as of 4/23, he's not an employee. Now, for all these other terms, they were also not an employee. So why didn't we put that? Well, the reason we're putting that he's not an employee here, or is not applicable, his employment status, is because he's still offered benefits after that. And again, this is only for the self-insured, but it's basically saying as of 4/23, he is a retiree. And then it's saying his benefits, he is insured as of 5/1. And if he was if instead it was COBRA coverage and not a retiree, you would put COBRA here. So whether it's COBRA or retiree, you would put the status that they have after their termination, and then you'd put their insurance information here. Now, here we have an individual, we have Chuck Norris, who worked for the company for quite some time. Now, he actually started the year on COBRA. He terminated last year and elected COBRA benefits, but as of January 1st, 17, he was neither a full-time or part-time employee, so he is NA, like that, it doesn't apply, he doesn't have an employment status. His insurance coverage is going to be COBRA, and it's showing he was insured since the beginning of the year. Now, you'll see here, his COBRA just happened to end May 31st, 2017. So if their COBRA doesn't end, if he was just insured COBRA through the entire year, there would be no coverage offer end date. Either if he stopped paying COBRA or maybe went on new insurance, or for whatever reason the COBRA coverage ended, that's what you're going to put the COBRA coverage end date there. And then the final example here, you've got Jason Statham, worked for the company for quite some time. And again, on January 1st, 2017, he was no longer employed with the company. He was neither part-time nor full-time, so that's not applicable. And his insurance coverage affordability, again, for COBRA and retiree affordability isn't a consideration. So by letting us know COBRA or retiree, you're letting us know that's their status, so we're actually not going to be concerned with the affordability. But this does, you'll want to let us know that. And again, this is saying, hey, he was a retiree who was insured, so they're getting those retiree benefits, and he's been getting them since the beginning of the year. And you'll see there's no end date. So for this individual, they were just a retiree receiving benefits since the beginning of the year, and providing there's no other changes, and they just get benefits throughout the remainder of the year, this is what it will look like. So I definitely do want to thank you for all the time and attention you've given to these spreadsheets. If you have any questions, definitely do feel free to give me a call. You can reach me at this number here, 954-983-9970. So thank you very much for paying attention to these videos on how to complete the spreadsheets. And if you have any other questions, do give me a call. Have a wonderful day.